What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got a Lightning Seeds top 10 song reactions from our friend and longtime patron, Evan David. Thank you, Evan David. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons that make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, we super appreciate it. Check out the Patreon link below. The patron link on the end screen. We put up videos every single day, and that is a ton of man hours. Okay, I don't know anything about the Lightning Seeds at all, but if you've ever watched one of our Evan David reactions that he has brought, he brings tons of information. So if you don't know a lot about him, or even if you do, you're going to learn something. Just a reminder too, before we even get started, the music will not be in this video, but it's at a Vimeo link below, so follow along with us. All right, let's get into Evan David's facts. He says, rock and roll legend has it, the first roots of what would become the Lightning Seeds can be traced back to the 1970s in Liverpool, England, when the band's founder and for a long time only real member, singer-songwriter and guitarist Ian Broudie first emerged on the thriving local post-punk musical scene as part of the short-lived but highly influential art punk group Big in Japan, an experience which Broudie himself later described as follows. I grew up in Liverpool, and the first bands I was in all centered around a club called Eric's, which was kind of a lot of misfits who probably just like the Velvet Underground. I mean, that's a good choice, right? And that was what they had in common, really. We didn't do that many gigs, and we weren't very good, and we didn't last long, but we had great intentions. Broudie would elsewhere go on to explain that while being in Big in Japan had been, quote, more performance art than rock and roll, it gave me a healthy disregard for musicianship. It's ideas that are important, not proficiency. Now, that's an interesting, I don't know that I agree with that, but hey, man, it's his deal. By contrast, Evan David says, perhaps another Big in Japan alumni, singer Jane Casey, later recalled that Ian Broudie, like Mr. Number One musician, even at that age. He was very young, but he was going to be our ace rock musician. There was no doubt about it. And here we were just having a great time, having a laugh, messing around. And suddenly Broudie comes and he's got you rehearsing all the time and he's trying to make you sing properly. So I don't know. I mean, Ian said it's ideas that matter, but he's kind of going the other way with that. Following the implosion of Big in Japan in 1979, many of whose members would later go on to become part of the far more commercially successful UK bands such as Frankie Goes to Hollywood and KLF, Broudie, by contrast, and again in his own words, instead, quote, kind of got roped in to produce a Liverpool group called Echo and the Bunnymen. So I ended up a producer almost by default, and that delayed me to a certain degree. A decade later, however, musically frustrated Broudie, who by then had produced groups such as Wall of Voodoo and The Fall, as well as the Bunnymen, had begun to grow increasingly anxious to become a proper performer in his own right, later explaining that, quote, I'd done a couple of demos and I started to think I was getting a bit old, and I thought, I've got to do me songs. And I remember I played them to Mark E. Smith of The Fall, and he really encouraged me and said, you've got to do this. There were loads of Liverpool bands signing mega expensive deals, but I couldn't do any gigs because it was just me, and I couldn't really find people who I thought I'd be comfortable in a band with. Undeterred, in 1989, Broudie duly began to record his own material under the pseudonym of The Lightning Seeds, later explaining that The Lightning Seeds started from my writing a couple of songs and then feeling like I'd like someone to hear these songs. And it was funny for me. Originally, I thought, well, I'll do these songs and I'd get someone to sing them. Then no one turned up and I thought, well, it's better you can't have a row with them if it's you. So I ended up trying to sing them. And I was very unsure about singing it. I sort of recorded the first LP, came back and thought, well, this will help. It'll get it out of my system. It was a real surprise when it was a hit. Evan David says, incidentally, the slightly esoteric Lightning Seeds name itself derived from an occasion when Broudie was listening actually to a Prince song, Raspberry Beret. And there's a lyric in there where I thought he said, hanging out with the Lightning Seeds. It was just a great vision of hanging out with this gang called the Lightning Seeds. I thought they sound quite cool, and then I listened again. I realized that he said the thunder hides what the lightning sees. So then there was a name to put on the single in hope that a band would be created around it. I always love to hear. I mean, I was wondering, like, the Lightning Seeds, how do you come up with that? Evan David says the first Lightning Seed single, dubbed Pure, was indeed an unexpected hit on both sides of the Atlantic, reaching the top 20 in the UK and the top 40 in the US, and thus beginning a musical odyssey, which would see Broudie record a total of 7 studio albums under the Lightning Seeds banner up to the present day, albeit in the case of the first 3 albums. 1990's Cloud Cuckoo Land, 1992 Sense, and by far the most successful and in many eyes, including my own, Evan David says, their best album, 1994's Jollification, without having yet ever truly become a fully fledged touring band to boot. As Broudie himself later explained, after all, I never really saw myself at the front of a band. I always felt like I was the guy who would be a little more behind and have a guy up front singing. And that was the intention with the Lightning Seeds, but I could just never find the right person. I kind of drifted into being a record producer. When I made my first 3 Lightning Seed albums, I hadn't actually ever played any gigs, and it was just me playing everything, and I recorded them in the house, man. So it's a little bit DIY. Jollification came out, and I decided I would like to play some gigs live, and they were my debut as such, both as a singer and as an unlikely frontman. Not too confident, I decided not to try and recreate the record. I just have a beat group type lineup, and we play the songs, and hopefully the songs would withstand that treatment. Having thus finally put a touring lineup together, albeit a consistently changing one, the Lightning Seeds will go on to further success over the next few years, both in the charts and as a live band, with Brody again recalling, quote, how suddenly his band existed and it was like a great year for me. Every musician is searching for an audience, really. I was quite removed from it with Pure because it was just a video or whatever. Then actually going and being on top of the pops and playing shows, it's just a wonderful feeling when you feel like you've got an audience and your music is being heard. It was while Brody was in the midst of recording the follow-up to Jollification, namely 1996 Dizzy Heights, however, that he received the call that would ultimately give both himself and the Lightning Seeds as a whole a true claim to music immortality of sorts, when England's official football association, better known as the FA, asked him to record a song to promote the England football/soccer team at an upcoming international event, the European Championships, held over 4 years, and this time, moreover, in England itself. Roping in comedians and fellow soccer fans David Bedell and Frank Skinner, who were best known at the time for presenting the highly popular TV show Fantasy Football, Brody succeeded in crafting a true sporting anthem, the irrepressible Three Lions, which not only achieved #1 in the UK singles chart at the time, and on 3 further separate occasions in the future, of which more later, but which has also since become indelibly linked not only to people's fond memories of this particular tournament, but also to the wider fortunes of the England football team itself, and indeed, at least to some extent, to people's love of football as a whole. As Brody himself once put it, quote, what I love about that song is that it is a wish. It's not a crowing victory, and it's sung by other countries and by other clubs. I love that it's become a song that all football fans can sing. Even in the wake of this undoubted success, however, Ian Brody himself would become increasingly dissatisfied with how the wider musical career of the Lightning Seeds was evolving, later going so far as to claim that, quote, I didn't really enjoy the whole period. I'm used to being the outsider more than a safe bet. Evan David says, perhaps unsurprisingly, therefore, by the time the band's 5th studio album, the far more stylistically diverse and experimental Tilt was released to disappointingly low sales in 1999, a sense of diminishing returns was increasingly creeping into Brody's own thinking until he eventually felt like the Lightning Seeds had come to a bit of an end, he said. In my head, it was going to be 3 albums, Cloud, Cuckoo Land, Sense, and Jollification. And then Jollification, did great, and I felt like, well, you can't stop there. And I did Dizzy Heights, and then Tilt was a massive flop, really. And I liked it. I think it was in my mind that you've got to do those things at the right time. There's a synchronicity of you and the world, and I think it was just too early for that record in a way. I wasn't able to get what I was trying to get, and it wasn't the right moment for it. And I felt like it might have been one too many. So I kind of stopped, and I thought, that's it. I ain't going to do this anymore. And then there was an inside band from Liverpool, and I heard the demo and thought, I really like this band. I'll go and meet them. And it was the Coral. Thus, for the next 10 years or so, Brody would put Lightning Seeds into an unofficial hiatus while fully resuming his production career, working mostly with Liverpool-based bands such as the Zootons as well as the aforementioned Coral, but also contributing behind the scenes to recordings by bands from elsewhere such as the Subways, Noor Dessur, the Rifles, and I Am Clute. As Brody, who had also kept his production career going during his Lightning Seed days, working with artists such as Northside, the Primitives, Terry Hall, and the Dodgy, later himself explained, I was always a bit of a reluctant producer. It's not something I've aspired to be, and I've always kind of shied away from it. But I think when I've fallen in love with a band, and I wish I was in that band, the only way I can be in that band a bit is by producing them, and I think that's at the root of it. That's what I wanted to be a part of, those special people. I've described it before as definitely wanting to be the Edge, not the Bono. Makes sense, man. In the meantime, Brody would also release a more folk rock influenced album, Telltales, under his own name in 2004, before finally reluctantly releasing another album dubbed Four Winds under the Lightning Seeds name in 2009, at a time when, as Brody put it, quote, I had a few songs and I kind of got pressured into putting them out as a Lightning Seeds album. And as soon as it came out, I felt like I didn't want to support it or tour it or anything. And again, it's not that I don't like the album or anything. It just didn't feel right. Nevertheless, Brody would increasingly feel a desire to finally quit producing other people's work and return to performing in his own right as a self-proclaimed troubadour, and as such would indeed resume intermittently touring under the Lightning Seeds name in 2010. And in October 2022, which was just last month when I'm filming this, he would finally release another Lightning Seeds album, the excellent and highly recommended See You in the Stars. As Brody himself recently acknowledged, quote, "It's been a big gap between albums. It's about 12 years since. But then I've written a set of songs now that I really like and that do sound like the Lightning Seeds. And the band that I've got are so lovely and so good that it feels like the best moment of my career to a large extent. Probably not in the sense that it's not ever going to be 1995, 96 again, but personally it feels really good. I'm really quite excited about these songs, and I love playing live with the fellas. So it's a fruitful moment. Hopefully it's a good chapter. Hopefully not the last chapter, but certainly far into the book. Maybe part of that is the fact that my son Riley's there, and you get a joy from showing him an experience. It's a lovely thing for me at the moment, and maybe that's partly why I'm re-inspired with it, you know. Indeed, Evan David says Ian's son Riley Brody is now the guitarist for the Lightning Seeds, of which more later. Finally here, overall, the Lightning Seeds have to date achieved a grand total of 15 top 40 singles, and not counting compilations, a further 3 top 40 albums in the UK. At the height of their success during the 90s Britpop era, deservedly acquired a reputation for creating so-called perfect pop, which for all that Ian Brody still dislikes the term, claiming that there's a real difference between searching for perfection and the pursuit of excellence. And I would never search for perfection, he said, but I'm always trying to push a boundary and get it better. And even though that sounds a subtlety, it's a universe of difference. Evan David says, nevertheless, seems to me as a good summary as you could come up with of what Brody and the Lightning Seeds were and are capable of at their peak, crafting a plethora of vibrant and colorful tunes, which, to my untrained ears at least, often remind me of a kind of 90s Scouse equivalent of ELO. As such, which I'm acutely aware that this particular top 10, or rather top 11, because there's actually 11 in this one, as I'll explain later, may not please everyone. I've nevertheless tried to create a list of big hits and personal favorites, which will hopefully serve as a worthy introduction to the work of a surprisingly underrated band who, for all their British success, never really cracked the States aside from Pure as ever. However, I look forward to seeing what the musical experts at RTTC make of it, and to seeing any and all other top 10 lists that other Lightning Seeds fans come up with below in the comments. All right, we are going to kick this thing off. We're going to have several videos. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Evan David. You see, well, we're going to kick this off with Lucky You. It's taken from their third album, Jollification, eventually reaching 15 in the UK singles chart upon its re-release in October of 1995 after originally peaking at 43 a year earlier. This musically lively yet lyrically scathing tune is a colorful example of Ian Brody's declaration that, quote, the way pop art is like a moment captured in an explosive way that you then put on the wall. That's how I want my songs to be. And as such, I'd like you to react to its official video, which amplifies its explosive musical tendency to the upteenth degree. All right, let's do it. Lucky You, a little fun video there. I mean, it's a 90s video, man. I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. The song itself, I guess, is about, like, I think this girl's lying to him and he knows it. So it's really hard on reactions. It's kind of, you got to react to the video or the song because I can't follow with all the lyrics and watch the video. So I got to go back and look at the lyrics. So you're not going to get on the videos. You're never going to get a lot of musical breakdown because you got to kind of track with the song while it's going on. But it appears that she cheated on him. He's kind of calling her out and he wants her to admit it, or she's doing some things she shouldn't do. It was all right for me. I mean, you know, it kind of lacks a little bit of energy for me, but you know, pleasant sound. And I mean, there's probably a reason why it's number 11. And next up, we have Sweetest Soul Sensations, taken from their fifth album, Tilt, and reaching a lowly 67 in the UK singles chart upon its release in March of 2000. Evan David says this beautifully bittersweet tune with this Al Green sampling, soul-inspired melody is both a compelling demonstration of the overriding stylistic diversity that characterized, and in chart terms, at least probably doomed, this ill-starred album, as well as amply showcasing in turn why this lack of success was so profoundly undeserved in Evan David's view. Sweetest Soul Sensations. I like that one a lot more than I liked the previous track. I thought that was really good. I thought he sounded great. He brings, I mean, basically this girl he thought it was going to be love and there's going to be all these fireworks, right? He said, I thought there'd be fireworks. I expected changes. I thought there'd be trumpets, Sweetest Soul Sensations. So that's your chorus, but he's been on his own all day with Al Green and Marvin Gaye waiting for Rewind to play. I'm anticipating mood swings. Al sings once more. Everything is changing. You played Mind Games before, so you know he expected what we see in the movies, right? This fireworks going off, and man, this just undying love and passion and devotion to each other. And that's not happening for him. So he's sitting all alone, lamenting that. So I thought it was good songwriting. I thought he sounded really good. All right, next up we have the song Change. We're going over to YouTube to watch a live performance of it. Taking once more from Jollification, reaching number 13 in the UK singles chart upon its release in January of 1995. Brody recalled the genesis of this literally driving tune as follows, quote, I really enjoy singing Change, and I remember writing it very quickly one afternoon. I'd had a row with my then girlfriend. I just remember thinking, she looks so cute when she just stormed out, jumped in her car, and then drove off, and it just sparked the whole song, really. As such, and as a fitting showcase, Evan David says, of the Lightning Seeds' true potential as a genuinely live band, we're going to react to the powerful performance of the song at the Glastonbury Festival in June of 1995. Change. I've said it before. I'd love to go to Glastonbury, Leeds, or Reading. Man, I don't know if it's ever in the cards for me in my life, but a good performance there of the song. I mean, he's writing it to a girl because you can tell we got a little bit of the lyricism in verse 1, but basically she kind of does whatever she wants and doesn't follow in with what society or what other people want her to do. And he's just telling her, don't ever change. So a good message for most people. Next up at number 8, we have I Wish I Was in Love. Taken once more from Tilt, this wonderfully wistful album track was co-written by Terry Hall of the Specials and once again boasts a profoundly moving melody, this time built around a refrain from Peter Green's equally emotive Fleetwood Mac tune Man of the World, while at the same time also exemplifying Brody's own personal view that, quote, I hate it when music is moaning, but I think it does have to affect someone emotionally. A lot of the time I try to be very positive in my writing, but I think it's probably positive through gritted teeth. I Wish I Was in Love. A sad song, man. A nice melody on that one. I enjoyed it. I thought Ian sounded good. Basically saying he wished he was in love. There's a line in here that kind of sums it up. It's down a little bit in here. He said, I was never, I'll just read the whole verse. Yeah, I was never one to make a fuss, even when the two of us. So he was in love at one time, right? Or close to it. We're tumbling from all we knew. I could say I needed you. Or would that give you reason to believe that you could need me too? So things were going bad. I think instead of pouring out his heart, he didn't go there. And now he's like, dang, man, I wish I was in love. So a good offering there. Next up at number 7, we got Perfect. Taken once more from Jollification and reaching 18 on the UK singles chart upon its release. In June of 1995, Evan David says it's another truly perfect example of Ian Brody's self-confessed tendency towards writing songs that were really, quote, sad masquerading as happy. Well, I mean, we just had that with I Wish I Was in Love, right? And while Brody also, as I mentioned before, generally disliked the critical label of perfect pop being applied to his music, when you listen to this tune in particular, I, for one, find it increasingly hard to argue against it. All right, Perfect. And as Evan David alluded to, things were not going well. Perfect day, a perfect night. Tell me all those perfect lies. I mean, this man, Ian, has been screwed over by somebody bad, or he's got a great, he could get in that mind space if it didn't happen to him. So yeah, and of course, Now Tomorrow's Here Today, and today's just fade away. Watch the morning, chase the night, rolling home, it's getting light. Feeling sleepy, full of wine, fall in bed just in time. And then the perfect stare of perfect eyes that kiss you as they tell you lies. So yeah, man, this man has not had good luck. Now we're up to number 6, Marvelous, taken once again from Jollification and reaching 24 in the UK singles chart. Upon its release in April of 1995, Evan David says his prime slice of 90s Britpop captures the more outwardly optimistic, yet still slightly cynical undertones of its era more completely than perhaps any other Lightning Seeds tune, in much the same way that Ian Brody himself once declared that, quote, it sounds like it's of the time, but not like anything else of the time, which would sum me up, really. I've never been part of the gang. I've never really been part of any scene, and I've always been a little bit of a long odds bet. We're going to watch the official video for this one. Marvelous. A fun video, man. That double-decker bus just crammed with people. That had to be fun to film, maybe, or maybe it was miserable to film, but it was fun to watch. You know, he's just telling them that things could be marvelous. Open up the window and jump into the blue. Things could be marvelous. Things could be fabulous soon. Of course, oh, well, these are the days and this is the life. There'll always be something on your mind. You'll never quite find once you ever make up your mind. And I definitely in this song see like the perfect pop thing in there as well. I'm not sure that perfect pop is exactly my thing, but I see why people like it, and it's very well done. All right, we're going to get to the top half of this list. Coming in at number 5, we have Pure, taken from the first Lightning Seed albums, Cloud Cuckoo Land, and reaching number 16 in the UK singles chart, 31 on the US Billboard Hot 100 upon its release in June of '89. Ian himself described the historic significance of this truly magical tune to his career as follows, quote, it was the first song I ever finished entirely on my own. When I wrote out the lyrics for Pure, it had so many words, and I thought, I made a big error here. This isn't a proper song. It's got too many words, and I cut a few out. There was a guy I knew who was kind of a 60s cigar-smoking music biz guy who'd say, if you ever finish the tunes, send them to me. So I sent him the songs I recorded at home. He called back and said, I'm sitting in my garden. The sun is shining. I love this. It sounds great. The song Pure, it's fantastic. I thought, oh no, it's not on the album. I haven't finished that. Pure was like a magical thing that changed my life, really. It ended up in America, and it was a lesson to me. I hadn't finished it, and I was so unconfident with that. So what I gained from that is you've got a good idea, however badly you do it, it will always be a good idea. If you haven't got a good idea, no matter how well you sing it and whatever you do, it will never be a good idea. And that's been my mantra all the way through songwriting and my whole career. So that is some good advice right there. And we are watching the vid on this one. Pure, definitely a lot of lyrics in a good way. I think Ian's a really good writer. I don't necessarily always love the arrangements. I think his voice is great. I know that Evan Davis alluded to this as Britpop. I mean, I like me some Britpop. I've said so many times on the channel, if you watch our album drafts in the 90s, man, I mean, Pulp, Blur, Oasis, even you want to consider Suede in the verse, they're all over my 90s list, right? I've said before I didn't like 90s music until I got to the 90s album drafts, and this channel listened to so much good stuff from the UK. So it's not that for me, but I mean, this song was fine, but like I said, the lyricism is really good. I mean, the chorus just lines smiling in the dark, shooting stars around your heart, dreams come bouncing in your head, pure and simple every time, and you're crying in your sleep. I wish you'd never learned to weep. Don't sell the dreams you should be keeping, pure and simple every time. I thought those are great lyrics. All right, next up we have at number 4, we got Sugar Coated Iceberg, taken from their 4th album, Dizzy Heights, and reaching number 12 in the UK singles chart. Upon its release in January of 1997, this gleefully absurd tune was co-written with Stephen Jones from fellow Britpop band Baby Bird, whom Brody admired for his lyrical sense of humor in tunes such as Baby Bird's most famous hit, You're Gorgeous, and was lyrically constructed around the wonderfully bizarre concept of a sugar-coated iceberg in a way that aptly demonstrates Brody's wider view, expressed elsewhere, that, quote, I always call the Lightning Seeds pop music because for me, pop music is an art form and you can do what you want. Other top types of music have their parameters, but pop can be anything. This is their official video, which Evan David says is equally bizarre. All right, Sugar Coated Iceberg, nice little pop song. Very bizarre video, but very entertaining. And I think once again, even though it's wrapped up in this catchy little tune with a nice melody, this girl screwed him over. I don't care what songs you sing or how you think of all those pointless things. Sweet nothing's what you bring. So fly away on sugar-coated wings. And then, of course, I'm sinking deep. I'm going under. That sugar-coated iceberg tastes so sweet until you tumble. Those sugar-coated lies, all those tricky things you said on Angel Wings, they're flying around my head. You were cheap, but I was sold. I should forget you, but I won't be told. So really good lyricism there. That was a nice tune. Now we're up to number 3. You see it below. Ready or Not, also taken from Dizzy Heights and reaching 20 in the UK singles charts upon its release in February of 1996. This glorious ode to the Carpe Diem spirit of the Britpop era reminds us that, as Ian Brody once again put it, I feel like Lightning Seeds has to have a certain positivity, even though my natural bent is a little bit on the blue side. We can see that through the writing. I think that always gave the push-pull against those two things. It kind of defines it for me when I'm writing a tune. Generally, if it's got that to it, then I think it's a Lightning Seeds tune. Ready or Not, they okie dokie you at like the 3-minute mark. You think it's over, but they keep on going. This one doesn't have so much of the downside, right? Even in the lyrics, I mean, the melody is great, but they, he's just telling you that, I guess this person, they're just going to go out and party when he's feeling down. We're going to kind of go out there. I've got a million thoughts, and when I've thought them all, I'll find a million more tonight. When I'm feeling sad, I know it's such a drag, and then I get so mad, and then I feel so bad. Oh, you make me be all right. It's the toppermost high. Oh, it's you. You do. Crack up your face and give us a smile because it's you. You do. So it could be a love interest. It could just be a friend. All right, we got 2 songs left. At number 2, we got The Life of Riley, taken from the second Lightning Seeds album, Sense, and reaching 28 on the UK singles chart and 98 on the Billboard Hot 100. It got in there when first released in March of 92. This dazzling, brilliant tune took on a new lease of life when the BBC's legendary soccer highlights program, Match of the Day, began using its opening instrumental section as a soundtrack to its Goal of the Month competition, a process which began the band's association with the beautiful game in a way which will later bear further fruit in the shape of the by now equally legendary Three Lions tunes. As Brody himself later recalled, it didn't feel like a big deal at the time, but over the years it became one of our biggest songs to play live. It was strange for me because it's a song about waiting for my son Riley to be born and the nerves surrounding that. When I first saw it on Match of the Day, I was surprised, but the more I saw it, I got it. The intro really did suit it. It kept it for a long time, and it helped that song. As a musician, you need a bit of serendipity, and The Life of Riley just happened to get on Match of the Day. And then there was Three Lions. I'm far more of a musician. Hopefully, I'm a singer and songwriter too, who won't just be remembered for Three Lions, but I probably will be. These days, of course, the song also possesses another layer of surreal serendipity, Evan David says, in that Riley Brody himself is a fully fledged member of the Lightning Seeds and therefore often plays a song named after him live alongside his father. I'd like you to react to the official video for the song. All right, The Life of Riley. Great melody on there, just a nice, pleasant tune. The video is, of the time with the effects and the kind of the green screened, and they made an effort on that. I like that. It almost reminded me of a very, very scaled down version of the Smashing Pumpkins Tonight, in certain aspects. Obviously, that video from the Pumpkins is way more developed, but they also had a lot more money. So, yeah, I thought that was a good tune, and I mean to write to your son, and it's got some good sentiments in here. So here's your life. We'll find our way. We're sailing blind, but it's certain. Nothing's certain. I like that. That's pretty much true. And I don't mind. I get the feeling you'll be fine. I still believe that in this world, we've got to find the time for the first time for The Life of Riley in there. All right. I don't think it's probably any secret what number one is, but Evan David says again, usually that would be it. But given that November 2022, which is what we're in right now, sees the start of the football soccer World Cup in Qatar, it would be churlish indeed to leave this one last bonus track out. So here we go. Three Lions, number one, originally issued as part of the English FA's official multi-artist compilation album, The Beautiful Game, to commemorate Euro 96, and swiftly reaching number one upon its first release as a single in May of 1996. This irresistible earworm of a tune, which humorously bemoans England's then 30-year lack of international success at men's football tournaments, which at this writing now stands at 56 years of hurt and counting, would later return to the number one spot on no less than three separate occasions. Once more later on in 1996, a third time, albeit with rewritten lyrics in 1998, and finally to date in 2018, thus breaking British chart records and becoming the footballing equivalent of Slade's perennial Yuletide anthem, Merry Christmas, Everybody. In the process, Evan David did do a Slade top 10 that's fantastic. Check that out after this. One of Ian Brody's collaborators in shaping the song, namely comedian David Bedell, would later ascribe the long-suffering but still somehow hopelessly optimistic appeal of Three Lions to the fact that it was, quote, really about magical thinking, about assuming we are going to lose, reasonably based on experience, but hoping that somehow we won't, while Brody himself will later go on to describe his own mixed feelings over the years about his most famous tune as follows. At Euro 2020, I was at the England-Germany game and the final against Italy. When Three Lions was sung by the fans, it was exhilarating. I do join in. When you're there, you're just one of the crowd. It was great that another generation embraced it. I've had a mixed relationship with the song over the years. On one hand, it's been a bit of a millstone. On the other, it's a massive gift. But now I'm really comfortable with it. I enjoy playing it and include it in most set lists. We're going to react to the original tune's official video. All right, man. I've heard this a couple times. I don't really remember it in our live streams. It's been brought by Evan Dave. I think someone else might have brought it years back, but let's go. Number one, Three Lions. All right, Three Lions. A really catchy tune, and I mean, I see why it's so beloved, and the video is very well done. It's fun. It's just well done. So a great pick at number one. I'm sure this song is about to get a ton of play again in the UK, and rightfully so. So that is going to transition us to my favorite tracks. But before we do mine, Evan David's got his honorable mentions. They are Sense, All I Want, Tingle Tangle, Bound in a Nutshell, Control the Flame, Marooned, Flaming Sword, Why, Feeling Lazy, Like You Do, Life's Too Short, I Still Feel the Same, Sunshine, Emily Smiles, and especially What You Say, Where Flowers Fade, Waiting for Today to Happen, You Showed Me, Crowd Pleaser, and What If. So that is a ton of honorable mentions. I will get to my honorable mentions first and then give you my faves. Honorable mentions, Sweetest Soul Sensations, number 10 there, and Pure, and The Life of Riley. My faves are going to be Sugar Coated Iceberg, and of course, Three Lions. So let me know what you think of this below. Give us your own top 10 or your faves down here. Remember, it's very hard to put a top 10 or top 11, as Evan David did, of an artist's discography. I know he spends a ton of time doing it. He did a great job on this. I feel like I know the Lightning Seeds or Ian Brody more clearly. And I think Ian's a great lyricist. He wrote some really good lyrics for this. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I will see you.